Hello बच्चों, let's see passage 1. Passage 1 talks about the polluter's pay principle. Essentially holds that polluter will be liable for the pollution caused to the environment. So जो basically polluter pay principle है वो बोलता है कि जो भी polluter होगा जो harm कर रहा है उसी की liability होगी for the pollution that is being caused to the environment. The polluter is liable for every damage. यहाँ पे कैसे damages? सारे damages जो इस pollution की वजह से होंगे उसके लिए polluter liable होगा. So according to the polluter's pay principle, the polluter has not only to compensate the victims of the pollution but also compensate for the restoration of environmental degradation caused under 1972 and 1974 OECD recommendations. The measures to be taken by the polluter for controlling the pollution is decided by the public authorities. तो अब measures क्या क्या होंगे control करने के लिए कौन decide करेगा? ये public authorities decide करती है, so that the environment is in acceptable state post the industrial operation. तो environmental जो है acceptable state में होना चाहिए industrial operation के बाद भी, उसके लिए public authorities कुछ regulations form करेंगी. Therefore the polluter bears the cost of health hazards. अब कौन कौन सी cost bear करता है polluter? Polluter bear करता है cost of health hazard, cost to the public as well as the cost of restoration of the environment. In India, the polluter's pay principle was first time applied and defined in 1996 case. इस केस का नाम था Indian Council of Enviro Legal Action versus Union of India. In this case, Justice Dalveer Bhandari determined that reversing the imbalance caused to the ecology is part and parcel of the industrial process. तो यहाँ पे जो भी imbalance cause होता है किसी इंडस्ट्रियल ऑपरेशन की वजह से, तो उसको रिवर्स करना भी पार्ट एंड पार्सल होता है, उस इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोसेस का ही पार्ट होता है. Thus the financial responsibility of taking prevention and controlling the measures for the pollution caused should rest upon the industry which is causing the pollution. तो यहाँ पे सिर्फ और सिर्फ liability नहीं but financial responsibility की भी बात की गई है, जो polluter या industry जो pollution कर रहा है उसी के ऊपर आएगी. Continuing this, it is saying that the financial burden cannot be shifted. अब ये जो financial burden है कभी shift नहीं हो सकता है to the shoulders of government. आप कभी ये जो reversing the pollution की बात कर रहे हैं उसका burden, financial burden आप government पे shift नहीं कर सकते. Neither in preventing nor in correcting the debt. Multiple interlocutory and interim applications were filed in the case after the dismissal of writ petition, the review petition and the curative petition by the court. The judge in the case of Justice Dalveer Bhandari considered that it is easier for men with power and authority to disobey or non-comply with judicial pronouncement. In the case of Research Foundation for Science Technology National Resource Policy versus Union of India and others, and in Vellore Citizens Welfare Forum versus Union of India and others, judges respectively ended up with the conclusion that principles such as precautionary principle क्या होता है कि आपको precaution based approach अपनानी चाहिए, and the polluter's pay principle जो हम यहाँ पे बात कर रहे हैं ट्रिपल पी अप्रोच की, from an intrinsic part of the laws for the environmental law. ये environmental law के लिए बहुत important principles है इंडिया में. The polluter pay principle was already considered as a customary practice for international law for the protection of environment. तो polluter pay principle कोई आज का principle नहीं है, customary practice है international law की जो बहुत time से चलती हुई आ रही है. Hence the principle ought to be included in environmental law of India according to the judges. The judges further improved the scope of implementation of the principle in, अब ये कौन सा केस है? ये केस है AP Pollution Control Board versus Professor M.V. Naidu retired and others. The judges enabled the court, tribunals and other environmental organizations to apply this principle when the cases are registered in the tribunals and organization. So the application of this principle is not just limited to the courts, it is also extended to any tribunals or organizations जहाँ पे case register होता है. Now let's see the question. Let's see question number 1. It talks about in a hypothetical case, a large industrial complex located near a river was found to have been discharging toxic chemicals into the water for years. The local community downstream suffered health issues and the river ecosystem was severely degraded. अब हमें बताना है polluter pay principle इसमें कैसे. Here option 1 says the government is responsible for compensating the affected community while the industry follows for restoration. We have already seen that burden of repairing or competing the dent cannot be transferred to the government, so this option is wrong. B says the industry must compensate the affected community and cover the restoration cost of both ecosystem and community health. We have already seen that the industry which the polluter who pollutes is responsible for both the cost of restoration of the natural resource and also for the health issue being caused. So this is a right option. C says the industry is only required to compensate the affected community for health issues, with the government handling the ecosystem restoration. Again wrong option, because burden cannot be transferred to government either of restoration or of health. D says government takes complete responsibility for compensating affected community and restoring the ecosystem. Again a wrong answer. Let's see question number 2. It says a company involved in a manufacturing chemicals negligently releases hazardous gases into the air, resulting in respiratory illness among nearby residents. तो यहाँ पे respiratory illness हुई है due to the release of chemicals. The company is fined with a health for the health damages caused. How does this situation align with polluter pay principle? तो अभी जो फाइन लग गया है हमें बताना है कि अब ये कैसे polluter pay principle इसको गवर्न करेगा. Here option number A says the company should be only fined if it intentionally caused the gas release. यहाँ पे intention की बात की जा रही है, which is not an essential or criteria for judging whether polluter pay principle will apply or not. So this is a wrong option. B says the company should be fined for health damages but not responsible for restoring the environment. This is a wrong option, because we have seen in the polluter pay principle that the company is not only liable for the for compensating the health expenses, but is also responsible for reversing the damage that has been done to the environment. C says the company should be fined for health damage and held accountable for restoring the environment and preventing future incidents. This is a right option, because the same is in align with the polluter pay principle. D says the government should pay the health damages since it is responsible for monitoring industrial activities. Here the burden has been transferred to the government, which cannot happen under the polluter pay principle. So this is a wrong option. Let's see question number 3. In the case involving a mining company that has caused extensive soil erosion, deforestation, leading to loss of biodiversity and affecting communities, how might polluter pay principle influence the court decision? तो यहाँ पे लॉस ऑफ बायोडाइवर्सिटी भी हुई है और कम्युनिटीज जो हैं वो भी अफेक्ट हुई हैं. हमें ये बताना है कि इसमें polluter pay principle कैसे लगे. Let's see option A. It says the court may hold mining company responsible for all environmental damage and require them to pay for the restoration of the affected areas. This is right, because when we see polluter pay principle, the polluter is liable to compensate all the health issues and environment restoration when such pollution has been caused. So A is right option. B says the court may absolve the mining company for any responsibility and seek alternative ways to address the environmental issues. This is again a wrong option, because the environmental issues have been created due to the mining company's operations, and hence it should only be liable for reversing such polluted things. C says the court may impose fines on the affected communities but not preventing environmental damage caused by the mining company. Imposing fine on the already affected people is absolutely not what the court would do. So, and it is also against the principle of polluter pay, that says the polluter, the one who pollutes, will be responsible for the pollution. So this is again a wrong option. D says the court may allocate a portion of the restoration cost to the government, sharing the financial burden with the mining company. Financial burdens can never be transferred to the government under the polluter pay principle. So this also cannot be happen. Again, D is a wrong option. Fourth question says a situation where a local government fails to regulate water disposal facility properly, leading to pollution in the nearby water resources. The community experiences health issue and aquatic life is severely impacted. Can polluter pay principle be applied here? तो यहाँ पे लोकल गवर्नमेंट भी फेल हुई है और जो वाटर डिस्पोजल फैसिलिटी है उन्होंने भी काम ढंग से नहीं किया है, जिसकी वजह से हेल्थ इश्यूज हुई हैं और एक्वेटिक लाइफ है जो अफेक्ट हुई है. तो यहाँ पे हम polluter pay principle कैसे लगाएंगे? लेट्स सी. A says water disposal facility is solely responsible for compensating the community while the government handles the ecosystem restoration. This cannot happen, because there is no such division which can be done between both the entities. When there is a polluter, that person is fully liable for the pollution being caused. So A is a wrong option. B says both the water disposal facility and the government share the responsibility of compensating the community and restoring the ecosystem. This is the right option because there is no division of liability, but both the polluters, that is water disposal facility and government, both are being held responsible. But here the government is held responsible as a regulator and not as an authoritative entity, and hence it is also responsible for the pollution being caused. C is the government is responsible for compensating the community while the water disposal facility restores the ecosystem. Again, a wrong option. D says the water disposal facility is only accountable for compensating the community. The government cover all the ecosystem restoration costs. Again, a wrong option. Let's see question number 5. Last question says a court is reviewing a case involving a factory that emitted pollutants into nearby forest. तो यहाँ पे factory ने forest में pollutants emit किए हैं, causing extensive damage. The factory argues that the following legal emissions were under a limit at the time. How might the court's decision align with the polluter pay principle? Let's see the option. Option number A says the factory should not be held liable since it followed the legal emission limits. Here the legality of the pollution is not judged, it is judged that who will be responsible for the restoration of the pollution being caused. So A is the wrong option. B says the factory is accountable for the pollution regardless of legal emission limit and must cover the restoration cost. This is a right option because although the pollution might be under the legal emission limits, but it is still causing the pollution and harmful effects to the environment, and hence the polluter, that is factory, will be responsible for the pollution that is being caused. C says the factory is accountable for the pollution regardless of legal emission limit and must cover the restoration. This is again a wrong option because it is a repetition of option number B, but B is the right option. D says the factory should not only compensate the affected forest area, the government is responsible for covering the health related costs. This is again a wrong option because the burden has been transferred to government, which cannot happen under polluter pay principle. So I hope the passage was understandable. All the